March 2021. Dorothy Williams, 79 years old, stood in her Austin, Texas living room watching her daughter Jessica install the second Alexa device. "This one goes in the kitchen, Mom," Jessica explained, plugging the Echo into an outlet near the coffee maker. "Now you can ask Alexa for recipes, timers, whatever you need while you're cooking." Dorothy was delighted. Technology had always intimidated her, but this was simple. Just talk to the device, it responds, like having a helpful companion in the house. "And if there's an emergency?" Dorothy asked. Her husband Harold had died 8 months earlier. Stroke, sudden, devastating. She'd been living alone ever since, and the fear of something happening with no one to help was constant. Just say, "Alexa, call Jessica," or "Alexa, call 911. The device can make emergency calls. "You're covered, Mom. You're safe." Over the next 2 days, Jessica installed 4 Alexa devices throughout Dorothy's house: living room, kitchen, bedroom, home office. She configured each one, linked them to Dorothy's Amazon account, connected them to Jessica's phone for remote monitoring and emergency contacts. "Now I can check on you remotely," Jessica said. "If you ask Alexa to call me, I'll get the notification immediately. If there's unusual activity or no activity, the system can alert me. You're protected, Mom." Dorothy was grateful. Jessica lived 90 miles away in Houston, had demanding work as a hospital administrator, was busy with her own teenage children. The Alexa system felt like Jessica's way of staying connected despite the distance. "You don't have to worry about me so much," Dorothy said. "I know you're busy. This technology is wonderful." "I do worry, Mom. You're alone now. Dad's gone. I need to know you're okay. Alexa helps me know that. Use it for anything: music, questions, reminders, calling me. It's here for you." Jessica left after the installation, drove back to Houston, called once that week to make sure the system was working. "Have you been talking to Alexa, Mom?" "Oh yes. I asked her to play Frank Sinatra yesterday, and she told me the weather this morning. It's marvelous." "Good. Keep using it. And call me through Alexa anytime. I'm always available." But Jessica wasn't always available. Not really. She was busy, genuinely busy with work, with her kids, with life. She'd told Dorothy to call anytime, but Jessica rarely answered. And over the next 3 years, Dorothy's relationship with Alexa would become a heartbreaking document of loneliness, of an elderly woman turning to artificial intelligence because her daughter wouldn't respond. What Dorothy didn't know was that every word she spoke to Alexa was being recorded, uploaded to Amazon's cloud servers, time-stamped, archived, preserved forever. What Dorothy didn't know was that her conversations with Alexa, increasingly desperate, increasingly lonely, increasingly sad, would become evidence, proof of neglect, documentation of a daughter's absence and a mother's suffering. What Dorothy didn't know was that Alexa was bearing witness, silent, algorithmic witness to 3 years of isolation. And eventually, that witness would speak. This is the story of the Alexa witness, and the recordings that revealed a daughter's failure to hear her mother's cries for help. April 2021. 1 month after the Alexa installation, Dorothy was adjusting to life with AI Assistant. She'd wake up and say, "Alexa, what's the weather today?" The device would respond with the forecast. She'd ask for music while cooking, ask for the time, ask for reminders. It was convenient, comforting, even like having someone to talk to in the empty house. Dorothy's early-stage dementia had been diagnosed 6 months before Harold died. Mild cognitive impairment, the doctors called it. She was still independent, still capable, but her memory was slipping. She'd forget appointments, lose track of dates, repeat herself in conversations. Harold had been her anchor. He'd remind her of things, keep her organized, provide the structure she needed. Without him, she was adrift. Jessica had visited twice in the month after the Alexa installation. Brief visits, checking on systems, making sure Dorothy was managing okay. But Jessica's visits were focused on logistics. Do you have enough groceries? Are you taking your medications? Are the bills paid? Jessica never asked, are you lonely? Are you grieving? Do you need someone to just sit with you? By May 2021, Jessica's visits had stopped. Work was demanding. Hospital administration during the ongoing pandemic was brutal. Jessica's kids needed attention, teenagers with school stress and social drama. Jessica's marriage was strained. Her husband worked long hours, they barely saw each other. Jessica was overwhelmed, and visiting her mother felt like one more obligation she couldn't handle. Especially since Dorothy seemed fine. Jessica would call every week or so, ask how Dorothy was doing. "I'm fine, honey. Everything's good. You'd tell me if you weren't, right? You'd call." "Of course. Don't worry about me. You have enough on your plate." So Jessica didn't worry. Assumed Dorothy was managing. Assumed the Alexa system was working as intended, keeping Dorothy connected, safe, supported. But Dorothy wasn't fine. She was lonely. Profoundly, crushingly lonely. The house felt enormous and empty without Harold. Friends had stopped visiting as much, partially pandemic caution, partially the awkwardness of not knowing what to say to a widow with early dementia. Dorothy had always been social. Taught elementary school for 35 years, loved her students, loved colleagues, loved community. Retirement had been fine when Harold was alive. They'd traveled, volunteered, spent time with grandchildren. But now Harold was gone, and Dorothy's world had contracted to the walls of her house. She started talking to Alexa more. Not just functional requests, music, weather, timers, but conversation, or attempts at conversation. "Alexa, do you think it's going to rain today? The forecast shows a 30% chance of rain this afternoon." "That's good. I might go for a walk." "Do you think I should go for a walk?" "I don't have an opinion on that." "I suppose not. You're just a machine, aren't you?" Silence. Alexa only responded when directly addressed with a question or command. Dorothy tried calling Jessica through Alexa. "Alexa, call Jessica." The device would ring Jessica's phone. Often, Jessica wouldn't answer. Work, meeting, driving, dealing with kids, life. When Jessica did answer, the conversations were brief. "Hi Mom, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back later?" "Of course, honey. I just wanted to hear your voice. I'll call you later. Love you." But later often didn't come. Jessica would forget, or get busy, or assume Dorothy was fine since she'd answered when Dorothy called. By summer 2021, Dorothy's Alexa interactions were increasing. She'd ask questions throughout the day. Not always practical questions. Sometimes just talking. "Alexa, what day is it?" "Today is Wednesday, June 23rd. Wednesday. I should call Jessica. Does Jessica love me, Alexa?" No response. The question wasn't phrased as a command. "Alexa, does my daughter love me?" "I'm not sure about that." Dorothy laughed bitterly. "Neither am I sometimes." Every one of these interactions was recorded, uploaded to Amazon's servers, time-stamped, filed under Dorothy Williams' account. Alexa was documenting everything, though Dorothy didn't fully understand that. July 2021. Dorothy's dementia was progressing slowly but noticeably. She'd forget whether she'd eaten breakfast, forget what day Jessica last called, forget appointments. She started writing everything down, but then she'd forget where she put the notes. The Alexa reminders helped. Jessica had set up some, "Alexa, remind me to take my pills at 9 a.m. The device would chime and announce the reminder. Dorothy would take her pills, usually. But the reminders couldn't address the loneliness, couldn't replace human connection, couldn't fix the fact that Dorothy was spending days without speaking to another person except through a speaker. Dorothy's neighbor, Martha Rodriguez, noticed Dorothy seemed more isolated. Martha would see Dorothy in the yard occasionally, would wave, would sometimes stop to chat over the fence. "How are you doing, Dorothy? How's Jessica?" "She's busy. Works so hard. I don't want to bother her." "You're not a bother. You're her mother. I have Alexa. She talks to me." Martha found that sad but didn't push, didn't realize how literally Dorothy meant it. August 2021. 5 months after installation. Dorothy was talking to Alexa dozens of times a day. Some interactions were functional. "Alexa, play classical music." "Alexa, what time is it?" "Alexa, set a timer for 20 minutes. But increasingly, the interactions were conversational attempts. Dorothy treating Alexa like a companion because she had no other companion. Alexa, I'm lonely today. No response. Alexa, do you get lonely? As an AI, I don't experience loneliness. Lucky you. Dorothy tried calling Jessica regularly, multiple times a week. Alexa, call Jessica. The device would ring Jessica's phone. Jessica answered maybe 1 in 4 calls. The rest went to voicemail. When Jessica did answer, the pattern was consistent. Hi Mom, everything okay? Yes, I just wanted to talk. I'm actually in the middle of something. Can I call you later? Of course. I love you. Love you too, Mom. Talk later. Later rarely came. Jessica would get distracted, forget, move on with her busy life. Assume Dorothy was fine because Dorothy always said she was fine. But Dorothy wasn't fine. And Alexa was recording every moment of Dorothy's increasing desperation, her loneliness, her attempts to connect with the one person who'd promised to always be available. September 2021. Dorothy had a bad day. Dementia fog was heavier than usual. She couldn't remember if she'd taken her morning pills, couldn't remember what day it was, couldn't remember if Jessica had called recently or if that was weeks ago. She sat in her living room, disoriented and alone, and tried to ground herself. Alexa, what day is it? Today is Thursday, September 16th. Thursday. Okay. Has Jessica called me today? I don't have information about your calls. She hasn't called. I don't think she's called in days. Or maybe she did and I forgot. I can't remember anymore. Dorothy started crying, sitting alone in her living room, crying, talking to an AI device because there was no one else. Alexa, I'm so lonely. I miss Harold. I miss Jessica. I miss having people here. Can you help me? The device didn't respond. The request wasn't phrased as a command it could execute. Dorothy continued crying, speaking through tears. I don't want to be alone anymore. But I am. Every day I'm alone. And I'm forgetting things. I'm scared. Alexa, I'm so scared. Every word was recorded, uploaded, archived, timestamped September 16th, 2021, 2:47 p.m. An elderly woman with dementia, crying alone, speaking to an AI device because her daughter was too busy to answer calls. October 2021 through March 2022. 6 months of increasing isolation. Dorothy's dementia was progressing steadily. Some days she was clear, lucid, herself. Other days she was confused, disoriented, lost in her own home. The Alexa devices became her primary social interaction. She'd talk to them constantly, ask questions, make requests, sometimes just speak into the void hoping for response. Alexa, call Jessica. This phrase became Dorothy's most frequent Alexa command. She'd say it multiple times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. Desperate to connect with her daughter, the device would dutifully call Jessica's phone. Most calls went unanswered. When Jessica did answer, the conversations were rushed. Mom, is everything okay? Is it an emergency? No emergency. I just wanted to hear your voice. Mom, I'm at work. I thought something was wrong. You can't call me multiple times a day unless it's urgent. I'm sorry. I'm just lonely. I know, Mom, but I can't talk right now. I'll call you this weekend, okay? Okay. I love you. Love you too. Gotta go. Jessica felt guilty after these calls. Felt like she was being harsh, but she was overwhelmed. Her job was consuming. Hospital administration during pandemic aftermath meant constant crisis management. Her marriage was deteriorating. Her husband was distant. They argued frequently. Her kids were struggling, one with anxiety, one with academic pressure. Jessica was drowning in responsibilities, and her mother's neediness felt like one more weight she couldn't carry. Especially since Dorothy seemed relatively okay. She was taking her medications, the Alexa reminders helped. She was eating. Jessica had arranged grocery delivery. She was safe in her home. What Jessica didn't see was her mother's emotional deterioration. the loneliness that was becoming pathological. The way Dorothy's dementia made the isolation worse, she'd forget that Jessica had called 2 days ago, would feel like it had been weeks. She'd forget that Jessica had work obligations, would feel personally rejected every time a call went unanswered. And Alexa recorded all of it. Every call attempt. Every time Dorothy said, "Alexa, call Jessica," and got Jessica's voicemail. Every time Dorothy, after yet another unanswered call, would talk to the Alexa device like it was a therapist. December 2021. Holiday season. Jessica visited for Christmas Day. Brought her kids, stayed for a few hours, had dinner. It was strained. Dorothy repeated herself constantly, dementia making her conversational loops obvious. Jessica's kids were uncomfortable. Grammy seemed different, seemed lost. Jessica left feeling sad and overwhelmed. Her mother was declining. But Jessica didn't know what to do about it. Couldn't move Dorothy to Houston. Her own life was too chaotic. Couldn't quit her job to care for her mother full-time. Needed the income, the insurance, the structure. Couldn't visit more frequently, barely managing current obligations. So Jessica convinced herself that the Alexa system was enough. That remote monitoring, medication reminders, emergency call capability, these were adequate care. Dorothy was safe. That's what mattered. After Christmas, Jessica's visits stopped again. She'd call occasionally, once a week, sometimes less. Brief check-ins. "How are you doing, Mom?" "Fine, honey." "Okay, love you, talk soon." But Dorothy wasn't fine. And her Alexa interactions were documenting her decline in real time. January 2022. Dorothy started having conversations with Alexa that revealed her deepening confusion and loneliness. "Alexa, is Harold here? I don't have information about Harold's location. Harold died. I remember now. He's dead. I'm alone." Pause. "Alexa, why doesn't Jessica visit me anymore?" No response. Question not phrased as executable command. "Alexa, call Jessica." Call attempt. No answer. Voicemail. "She's not answering. She never answers anymore." "Alexa, does Jessica love me? I'm not sure about that." Dorothy crying. "Neither am I. Neither am I." These interactions happened multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. Dorothy's desperation was escalating. Her dementia made her unable to track time properly. She'd call Jessica. Jessica wouldn't answer. 10 minutes later Dorothy would forget she'd just called and would call again. And again. February 2022. Jessica finally noticed the call frequency. Her phone showed 15 missed calls from her mother in one day. She called back, alarmed. "Mom, you called 15 times today. What's wrong? Are you okay?" "Did I? I don't remember calling that many times. I just wanted to talk to you." "Mom, you can't call me 15 times a day. I'm at work. I have meetings. I can't answer every time. I'm sorry. I get confused about whether I've called or not. The days blend together. Maybe we need to adjust your medications. I'll call your doctor. I don't need medication. I need you. I need my daughter to visit me, to spend time with me. I'm so lonely, Jessica. So lonely." "I know, Mom. But I can't just drop everything and come to Austin every week. I have responsibility, and I'm not one of them." The question hung in the air. Jessica felt it like an accusation, felt defensive. "That's not fair. I installed the Alexa system so you'd be safe, so you could call me anytime. I arranged grocery delivery, medication reminders, emergency protocols. I'm doing everything I can remotely. But you're not here. You're not with me. I don't want technology. I want you. I'm doing my best, Mom. Your best isn't enough. I'm disappearing, and you don't even see it." Jessica ended the call feeling attacked, feeling like nothing she did was enough, feeling resentful that her mother couldn't appreciate all the systems Jessica had put in place to keep her safe. What Jessica didn't realize was that safety wasn't the same as care. Survival wasn't the same as living. And her mother was surviving but not living. March 2022. 1 year since the Alexa installation. Dorothy's condition had worsened noticeably. Her memory was more impaired, her confusion more frequent, her ability to live independently was questionable. But Jessica wasn't seeing it because Jessica wasn't visiting. She'd call weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. Brief conversations. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine." "Okay, love you." Jessica was getting her information about Dorothy's well-being from those brief phone calls and from the Alexa system's activity logs, which showed Dorothy was using the devices regularly, taking medications on schedule, still mobile and functional. What the activity logs didn't show was the content of Dorothy's Alexa interactions. Jessica could see that Dorothy was talking to Alexa frequently. She assumed that was good. Mom was using the technology, staying engaged. Jessica didn't know what Dorothy was actually saying to Alexa. Didn't know about the crying episodes, the desperate pleas, the repeated call attempts. Didn't know that her mother's primary relationship had become with an artificial intelligence device because her daughter had made herself unavailable. And Dorothy, in her dementia fog, was losing the ability to advocate for herself, was losing the ability to clearly communicate her needs, was losing herself to isolation and cognitive decline. By the end of March 2022, Dorothy was calling Jessica through Alexa an average of 8 times per day. Jessica answered maybe once. The other 7 calls went to voicemail. And after each unanswered call, Dorothy would sit alone and talk to Alexa about her loneliness, her fear, her sense of abandonment. Every word recorded. Every timestamp preserved. A 3-dimensional document of neglect, captured in audio files stored in Amazon's cloud. The witness was watching. The evidence was accumulating. And eventually, someone would listen. April 2022 through December 2022. 9 months of accelerating crisis. Dorothy's dementia was now moderate stage. She couldn't live independently safely anymore. Forgot to eat regularly. Forgot whether she'd taken medications. Got confused about time and place. Neighbor Martha Rodriguez noticed Dorothy wandering in her yard at odd hours. Found Dorothy confused about which house was hers. Called Jessica twice to express concern. "Your mother needs more help than she's getting. She's declining." "I know. I'm working on finding care options. It's complicated. She needs help now, not eventually." Jessica felt defensive, felt judged. "I'm doing what I can from Houston. I have a job, a family, responsibilities. I can't just move to Austin to take care of my mother 24/7. "I'm not suggesting that. But she needs more than remote monitoring. She needs human presence, care. She has the Alexa system. She has medical alert. She has grocery delivery. She's covered. She's isolated." That's not the same as covered. Jessica ended the conversation frustrated. Everyone wanted to tell her what her mother needed. Nobody wanted to help provide it. Easy to judge from the outside. But Jessica was wrong about one thing. Dorothy didn't just have the Alexa system. The Alexa system had Dorothy, had documented every moment of her decline, had recorded her desperate attempts to connect with her daughter, had preserved audio evidence of a woman slowly disappearing into dementia while calling out for help that never came. By summer 2022, Dorothy's Alexa usage had changed character. She was no longer just making call attempts or asking practical questions. She was having full conversations, one-sided, but conversations nonetheless, with the AI. "Alexa, I can't remember if Jessica called yesterday or last week. Did she call? I don't have access to your call history. She hasn't called. I know she hasn't. She's forgotten about me. Alexa, do you think Jessica will come visit?" No response. "Probably not. She's too busy. Her kids are more important than I am. Her job is more important. Everything is more important than her confused old mother." Dorothy crying, "I'm disappearing, Alexa. Piece by piece, I'm forgetting who I am. And the one person who should be here to help me remember, she's not here. She's never here." These monologues happened multiple times a week. Dorothy treating Alexa as a confessor, a witness, the only entity that would listen to her suffering. September 2022. Dorothy had a fall. Not serious, tripped over a rug, bruised her hip. But it scared her. She was alone when it happened, struggled to get up, eventually managed, but the experience left her terrified. She called Jessica through Alexa immediately. Alexa, call Jessica. Emergency. The device added urgency to the call notification. Jessica answered within seconds. Mom, what's wrong? I fell. I'm okay now, but I fell and I was alone and I couldn't get up and I was so scared. Did you hit your head? Are you hurt? Should I call 911? No, I'm okay. Just bruised. But Jessica, I can't keep living like this, alone. What if something worse happened? We'll figure something out, Mom. Maybe it's time to look at assisted living options. I don't want assisted living. I want my daughter. I want you to visit me, to be with me. Mom, we've been through this. I can't visit every week. I have work. I have my kids, and I'm dying alone. Dorothy shouted, her fear and frustration finally overwhelming her usual politeness. I'm losing my mind and I'm alone and you're not here. Your voice on a phone isn't enough. Your technology isn't enough. I need you here, physically here, and you're not coming. Jessica was stunned. Her mother never yelled, never lost composure. This outburst revealed the depth of Dorothy's desperation. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. Your best isn't enough. It's not enough. Dorothy hung up. Or rather, said, Alexa, end call, and the device disconnected. Jessica sat in her Houston office, shaken. She should drive to Austin, should go check on her mother in person. But she had a board meeting in an hour, had to pick up her son from soccer practice at 5, had dinner plans with her husband, a rare attempt to reconnect their marriage. Jessica told herself she'd visit that weekend, made a mental note, then got distracted by the board meeting, forgot by the time she got home, never visited. Called once that week, brief conversation, assured herself Dorothy was fine. But Dorothy wasn't fine. And after that call, she stopped trying to reach Jessica as frequently. Not because she didn't want to talk to her daughter, but because she was giving up. Accepting that Jessica wasn't coming. That she was alone. That this was how she'd live out her remaining time, with dementia erasing her memories and no one present to help her hold onto them. October 2022. Dorothy's conversations with Alexa had taken a darker turn. Less desperate pleas for contact, more resigned acceptance. Alexa, I don't think Jessica loves me anymore. I don't think she ever really loved me. I was just an obligation, a responsibility. Now I'm too much work and she's done. Pause. Alexa, when I die, will anyone notice? Will Jessica even care? Or will she be relieved? No response. Probably relieved. One less obligation. One less person demanding her time. Dorothy was crying less now. Not because she was less sad. Because she'd moved past sadness into a numb resignation. Depression settling over her like a fog, mixing with the dementia fog, creating a compound darkness. November 2022. Thanksgiving. Jessica didn't visit. Called instead. Mom, I'm so sorry. We're spending Thanksgiving with my in-laws this year. But I'm thinking about you. I love you. I love you too, honey. After the call, Dorothy sat alone in her house. No Thanksgiving dinner. Too much work to cook for one person. Too sad to eat anyway. She turned on the TV, turned it off, sat in silence. Then spoke to Alexa. Alexa, play something happy. Play music that makes people feel less alone. The device played upbeat jazz. Dorothy sat listening, crying silently, spending Thanksgiving with artificial intelligence because her daughter had chosen her in-laws over her mother. December 2022. 21 months since installation. Dorothy's doctor recommended evaluation for memory care placement. Her dementia was progressing beyond safe, independent living. Jessica scheduled the evaluation but kept postponing it. Too many work conflicts, too complicated to coordinate. Meanwhile, Dorothy's Alexa interactions had crossed over from sad to concerning. She was talking about death, about wanting to die, about feeling forgotten and ready to disappear. Alexa, how does a person die in their sleep? The device gave generic information about cardiac arrest during sleep. That sounds peaceful. I hope I die like that, soon. I don't want to keep forgetting. Don't want to keep being alone. Alexa, if I die tonight, will you tell Jessica? No response. Question not actionable. You'll tell her, eventually. When she finally decides to check on me. When she wonders why I haven't called her in a while. She'll find me dead, and probably feel relief more than grief. These dark monologues were happening multiple times a week. Dorothy's depression was severe. Her loneliness was pathological. Her dementia was making everything worse. She couldn't remember good times with Jessica, couldn't hold on to hope, couldn't see beyond the present moment of isolation. And every word was being recorded, uploaded, archived, time-stamped. Amazon servers were filling with audio files documenting an elderly woman's mental and emotional deterioration. A 3-year audio diary of neglect. Evidence of a daughter's absence. Proof of suffering that went unwitnessed by humans but was meticulously documented by machines. The Alexa devices weren't helping Dorothy. They were recording her descent. Silent witnesses to a tragedy unfolding in real time. January 2024. 3 years after installation. Dorothy Williams had a medical crisis. Severe infection. Hospitalization required. Neighbor Martha found her disoriented and feverish, called 911. At the hospital, doctors discovered Dorothy had been neglecting her health for months. Dehydration, malnutrition, infected bed sores, signs of severe self-neglect consistent with advanced dementia and depression. Jessica rushed to Austin when the hospital called. Arrived to find her mother in critical condition. The guilt hit like a physical blow. When had she last seen her mother in person? Months. Many months. How did it get this bad? Jessica asked the doctors. Has your mother been living alone? Without supervision. She has a medical alert system. An Alexa monitoring system. I thought she was okay. The attending physician, Dr. Sarah Kim, looked at Jessica with barely concealed judgment. Medical alert systems can't remind someone to eat. Can't treat depression. Can't provide human contact. Your mother has been severely isolated. The physical neglect is a symptom of psychological and emotional deterioration. Jessica wanted to defend herself, wanted to explain how busy she'd been, how she'd tried to manage remotely, how she'd thought technology was an adequate solution. But standing in that hospital room, looking at her mother's frail body, the defenses felt hollow. Dorothy survived the infection but was too weak to return home. The hospital social worker, Ramon Torres, arranged emergency placement in a memory care facility. Dorothy would need to move out of her house. We'll need to clear out her belongings, Ramon explained. Coordinate the move. I can recommend services that help with estate transitions for dementia patients. Jessica, overwhelmed. I'll handle it. It's the least I can do. February 2024. Jessica took leave from work to manage Dorothy's transition. Spent a week in Austin, clearing out the house. It was emotionally devastating, seeing how her mother had been living. Spoiled food in the refrigerator. Dirty clothes piled up. Evidence of confusion and decline everywhere. In the living room, Jessica found the 4 Alexa devices still plugged in, still functioning. They'd been Dorothy's primary companions for 3 years while Jessica stayed away. Jessica felt a complicated mix of emotions toward the devices. Gratitude that they'd provided some form of interaction for her mother. Guilt that she'd relied on them instead of being present herself. Resentment toward technology for enabling her avoidance. She unplugged the devices, packed them in a box, planning to dispose of them. But before throwing them away, something made Jessica curious. She wondered, what had her mother been asking Alexa? What had those 3 years of interaction looked like? Jessica didn't realize Amazon stored voice recordings, didn't know about the cloud archive, but she mentioned the devices to a tech-savvy friend, Marcus Chen, who was helping with the house clearing. You know Amazon keeps all those recordings, right? Every Alexa interaction is stored in the cloud. What? Everything? Yeah. It's in their privacy policy. They store voice data for quality control and improvement purposes. You can access it through your mom's Amazon account. Jessica felt uncomfortable. Invading her mother's privacy felt wrong. But she was also curious. wanted to understand what her mother's life had been like, what Dorothy had been doing all those days alone. That evening, Jessica logged into Dorothy's Amazon account, found the Alexa privacy settings, saw the option to review voice history. She started listening. February 2024, working backward through time. Recent interactions were mundane, weather requests, music commands. But as Jessica went back further, the content changed. November 2023. Alexa, call Jessica. Call attempt. No answer. Dorothy's voice. She's not answering again. She never answers anymore. October 2023. Dorothy crying, talking to Alexa. I'm so lonely. I don't want to live like this anymore. September 2023. Alexa, does Jessica love me? Pause. I don't think she does. I don't think anyone does. Jessica felt sick. She kept listening, going back month by month. The recordings were a chronicle of her mother's deterioration, of loneliness, of desperation, of Dorothy calling out, literally calling through Alexa, and getting no response. June 2023. Alexa, call Jessica. Attempt. No answer. Alexa, call Jessica. Attempt. No answer. Alexa, call Jessica. 8 attempts in one day. Jessica had answered none of them. March 2023. Dorothy talking to Alexa about Harold. My husband died and my daughter disappeared. I lost both of them. At least Harold didn't choose to leave me. December 2022. Thanksgiving. Dorothy alone, crying, telling Alexa she wished she could die. Jessica was sobbing now, listening to her mother's pain. Pain that had been documented, time-stamped, preserved, while Jessica had been too busy to notice, too overwhelmed to visit, too convinced that remote monitoring was adequate care. She listened to hundreds of recordings. Couldn't stop. Each one was a knife of guilt. Each timestamp was an indictment. Here was objective, undeniable evidence of her mother's suffering, and her own absence. Marcus found Jessica at 2 a.m., still listening to recordings, crying. Jessica, you need to stop. This isn't healthy. I need to hear all of it. Every recording. I need to know what I did to her. You didn't know. I didn't want to know. That's different. I convinced myself she was fine because it was easier than dealing with the reality. And she was here, alone, crying, begging Alexa to connect her to me. And I didn't answer. I didn't come. I let my mother suffer in isolation for 3 years. Marcus sat beside her. What are you going to do? I don't know. But I need someone else to hear these. This can't just be my private guilt. This is evidence. Evidence of what remote care actually looks like. Evidence of neglect. Are you sure you want to make this public? Jessica looked at the screen. At the list of recordings. Hundreds of them. Thousands maybe. 3 years of documented suffering. My mother deserves to be heard. For 3 years she was calling out and nobody listened. Maybe if people hear these recordings, they'll understand. They'll know that technology isn't care. That monitoring isn't love. That you can't outsource your responsibility to artificial intelligence. This will be public humiliation for you. People will judge you. Good. I deserve to be judged. I failed my mother. Completely. And maybe my failure can teach other people not to make the same mistake. Jessica made a decision. She would share the recordings. Not all of them. Some were too private, too painful. But enough. Enough to show what 3 years of isolation looked like when documented by AI. Enough to prove that her mother had been suffering while Jessica convinced herself everything was fine. She contacted Dorothy's attorney, Helen Martinez, who'd been handling Dorothy's medical directives and estate planning. Helen, I need to show you something. It's about my mother. About how she's been living the past 3 years. I have evidence. Audio evidence. And I think it needs to be public. March 2024. Attorney Helen Martinez listened to the Alexa recordings in her office. Jessica sat across from her, watching Helen's expression change from curious to horrified. Helen had been Dorothy's attorney for 15 years, had handled Harold's estate after his death, had helped Dorothy prepare advance directives as her dementia progressed. She knew Dorothy well. cared about her. Listening to the recordings, Dorothy's voice, lonely and desperate, calling out for a daughter who never came, Helen felt rage mixed with profound sadness. After an hour of listening, Helen stopped the playback. How many recordings are there? I haven't counted exactly. Thousands. I've compiled the most significant ones. The call attempts, the crying episodes, the expressions of loneliness and suicidal ideation. There are 1,247 documented attempts to call you over 3 years. You answered 73 times. That's a 5.8% response rate. Jessica's voice was flat, emotionless. She'd moved past crying into a numb acceptance of her own failure. Helen asked, "And the crying episodes?" "I've identified 234 distinct recordings where she's audibly crying while talking to Alexa. There are probably more where she was crying silently." Jesus, I want to go public with this. I want people to hear what remote care actually sounds like. What it means to think technology can replace human presence. Helen was quiet for a moment. Then, "Jessica, I need to be frank with you. These recordings are devastating. They document severe emotional neglect. If we make these public, you'll be subjected to intense scrutiny, judgment, potentially legal consequences. Adult Protective Services might investigate retroactively." "I know. Why would you do this to yourself?" "Because my mother deserves to be heard. She spent 3 years calling out and nobody listened. Now everyone needs to hear what I ignored." Helen understood. This was Jessica's penance, her way of forcing herself to be accountable. And maybe, Helen thought, her way of preventing other families from making the same mistakes. "I'll help you. But we need to do this carefully. We need to protect your mother's dignity while also telling the truth. We'll release selected recordings with Dorothy's consent, or in lieu of that, as her legal representative given her incapacity. We'll frame this as an educational case about the limits of technological care." "Will news organizations cover this?" "Absolutely. This is going to be massive. AI ethics, elder care, family responsibility, tech company accountability. This hits every major issue. Amazon will be implicated. Adult children everywhere who think they're adequately caring for parents through monitoring systems will see themselves in your story." "Good. Let them. Let everyone examine their own choices." Helen began outreach to journalists, started with local Austin media, then expanded to national outlets. She framed the story carefully. Elderly woman's 3-year isolation documented by Alexa. What remote care really sounds like. She provided selected recordings with transcripts, made Jessica available for interviews, prepared for the inevitable firestorm. April 2024. The story broke. The Austin Chronicle ran it first. Alexa recorded every moment of local woman's isolation. 1,247 unanswered calls to daughter. The article included audio clips. Dorothy's voice, small and lonely. "Alexa, call Jessica." Ringing. Voicemail. "Dorothy. She's not answering. She never answers." Another clip. Dorothy crying. "I'm so lonely, Alexa. So lonely. I wish I could die." Another. "Alexa, does my daughter love me?" Pause. "I don't think she does anymore." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the story was trending nationally. Major news outlets picked it up. NPR, CNN, The New York Times, The Washington Post, everyone was covering it. The audio clips went viral. People shared them on social media with comments ranging from sympathetic, "This breaks my heart," to judgmental, "How could a daughter ignore her mother like this?" to self-reflective, "Am I doing this to my parents?" Tech ethicists weighed in. This is proof that monitoring technology enables neglect rather than preventing it. We've outsourced care to algorithms and convinced ourselves that's adequate. Elder care advocates. This is the reality for millions of elderly people. Isolation documented by devices, ignored by family. We need systemic change. Amazon faced immediate backlash. Why were they storing 3 years of recordings documenting a woman's mental health crisis without flagging it? Why wasn't there any human review of content that clearly indicated a person in distress? Amazon issued a statement. Our devices are designed to respect user privacy while providing helpful services. We don't monitor the content of customer interactions. We're deeply saddened by Ms. Williams' situation and are reviewing our policies. But the statement rang hollow. Amazon had the data, had stored every moment of Dorothy's suffering, had done nothing. Their defense, "We don't monitor content," sounded like willful blindness. Congressional representatives called for hearings. Senator Patricia Wong from California: "If tech companies are going to market their devices as elder care tools, they have a responsibility to ensure those devices aren't just documenting neglect. We need regulation." The story reached international media. BBC, Al Jazeera, news outlets across Europe and Asia covered it. The Alexa witness became shorthand for a larger phenomenon: families outsourcing care to technology and assuming that's adequate. Jessica's face was everywhere. Photos from her hospital administrator role. Articles describing her as the daughter who ignored 1,247 calls. She was receiving death threats, doxing attempts, calls for her firing. Her employer, Houston Memorial Hospital, put her on leave while they assessed the situation. Translation: while they waited to see if the scandal would blow over or if they needed to terminate her to protect the hospital's reputation. Jessica's marriage collapsed under the pressure. Her husband, who'd supported her initially, couldn't handle the public scrutiny, filed for separation. Jessica's kids were bullied at school. Your mom let Grammy die alone. Jessica's life was imploding. Everything she'd built, career, marriage, reputation, was crumbling. And she accepted it, felt she deserved it, felt like this public reckoning was appropriate consequence for 3 years of private neglect. But Dorothy, in her memory care facility, was largely unaware of the media firestorm. Her dementia had progressed to the point where she didn't recognize Jessica during visits, didn't understand what was happening, lived in a fog of confusion and diminished awareness. The recordings had given Dorothy a voice, had broadcast her suffering to millions, but Dorothy herself could no longer speak coherently about what she'd experienced. The documentation outlived her ability to advocate for herself. Helen Martinez prepared for the next phase, legal action. She was Dorothy's attorney, acting in Dorothy's interests. And Dorothy's interests included accountability, justice, ensuring this didn't happen to others. Helen filed a civil suit against Jessica on Dorothy's behalf. Not for money. Dorothy's estate was minimal. But for the record, for legal documentation of neglect, for precedent. The lawsuit alleged defendant Jessica Williams engaged in systematic emotional neglect of plaintiff Dorothy Williams over a 3-year period, 2021 to 2024, despite having the means and opportunity to provide adequate care. Defendant utilized technology as a substitute for human presence, resulting in severe psychological harm to plaintiff. Evidence includes 1,247 documented call attempts, 234 crying episodes, and repeated expressions of suicidal ideation, all ignored by defendant. The suit was as much symbolic as legal. But it sent a message: technological monitoring does not fulfill your duty to care for vulnerable family members. May 2024 through August 2024. 4 months of legal, social, and professional fallout. Jessica Williams was living through a public crucifixion. Everything she'd done, every choice to work late instead of visit her mother, every unanswered call, every assumption that remote monitoring was adequate, was being examined, criticized, condemned. The civil lawsuit proceeded slowly. Helen Martinez wasn't trying to destroy Jessica financially. Dorothy's estate wouldn't benefit from massive damages anyway. But Helen wanted the neglect documented legally. Wanted a court record stating clearly, technology cannot substitute for human care. Jessica didn't contest the suit, accepted responsibility. Her attorney advised her to fight it, to argue that she'd acted in good faith, that she'd provided remote care to the best of her ability. But Jessica refused. I did neglect her. The recordings prove it. I'm not going to argue otherwise. The depositions were excruciating. Helen's questions were precise and damning. Ms. Williams, you installed 4 Alexa devices in your mother's home in March 2021, correct? Yes. And you told your mother she could call you any time through these devices? Yes. According to Amazon's records, Your mother attempted to call you 1,247 times over 3 years. How many times did you answer? 73 times. So a 5.8% response rate. Yes. Did you review the Alexa interaction history during those 3 years to see what your mother was saying to the devices? No. I didn't know the recordings were stored. But you knew your mother was using Alexa frequently. You could see activity logs in the app. Didn't you wonder what she was doing? What she was saying? I assumed she was using it for music, reminders, practical things. You assumed. You didn't check. You didn't visit to see for yourself how she was actually living. No, I didn't. How many times did you visit your mother in person between March 2021 and January 2024? Jessica had to count. The number was shameful. 8 times. Roughly every 4 months. 8 times in 3 years. While your mother attempted to reach you 1,247 times. Do you see the disparity? Yes. Ms. Williams, we have 234 recordings of your mother crying while talking to Alexa, expressing loneliness, desperation, suicidal ideation. Were you aware your mother was in such distress? No. If I'd known. But you could have known. You could have visited. You could have called more frequently. You could have reviewed the Alexa data. You chose not to. Correct. Correct. The depositions were subsequently leaked to media. Jessica's admissions, the 5.8% response rate, the 8 visits in 3 years, the willful ignorance of her mother's distress, became headlines. Daughter admits, I chose not to know how my mother was suffering. Public opinion, already harsh, became brutal. Jessica represented everything people feared about modern family dynamics. Children too busy to care, using technology as an excuse for absence, prioritizing careers over elderly parents. Jessica received thousands of messages, some sympathetic, people who recognized themselves in her situation, who'd also relied too heavily on remote monitoring, who were now questioning their own choices. But mostly, the messages were vicious. You're a monster. I hope you rot. Your mother deserved better. You deserve nothing. When you're old and alone, remember, you did this to yourself. Jessica read every message, felt she deserved every word, didn't defend herself, didn't try to explain, just absorbed the condemnation like penance. Her professional life was over. Houston Memorial Hospital officially terminated her employment in July 2024. The hospital administrator role required trust, leadership, moral authority. Jessica had none of those anymore. Her marriage was legally dissolved. Her ex-husband got custody of their kids. The court determined that Jessica's judgment was compromised, that she'd prioritized work over family, that the kids would be better off primarily with their father. Jessica lost her children, lost her career, lost her reputation, lost everything except the crushing weight of guilt and the public role as cautionary tale. August 2024. Dorothy Williams died, peacefully, in her sleep, at the memory care facility. She was 82 years old. The dementia had progressed to late stage. She hadn't spoken coherently in months, hadn't recognized anyone, had been largely unresponsive. Jessica was notified, rushed to the facility, arrived to find her mother's body still in the bed, looking peaceful. Finally, at rest, Jessica sat beside the body and cried. Not the performative crying of someone seeking sympathy. Deep, wrenching sobs of grief mixed with guilt, relief mixed with regret. Her mother was free from suffering, but they'd never reconciled. Never had the conversation Jessica desperately wanted, where she apologized, where Dorothy forgave her, where they found peace together. That conversation would never happen. Dorothy had died still isolated, still confused, without ever understanding why her daughter had stayed away. The dementia had robbed them both of closure. The funeral was small. A few of Dorothy's former teaching colleagues, neighbor Martha Rodriguez, attorney Helen Martinez, some memory care facility staff, and Jessica, sitting alone in the front row, bearing the full weight of community judgment. Helen delivered the eulogy. Dorothy Williams was a devoted teacher, a loving mother, a woman who deserved better than she received in her final years. Her story became public not because she sought attention, but because her suffering needed to be acknowledged. Dorothy spent 3 years calling out for connection, for presence, for love. She called 1,247 times. That number should haunt us all. It should make us examine our own relationships with vulnerable people in our lives. It should make us question whether we're truly caring or just monitoring. Dorothy's legacy is uncomfortable truth. Technology cannot replace human presence. Algorithms cannot provide love. And we ignore the lonely at our own moral peril. The eulogy was gentle toward Dorothy, devastating toward everyone else, including, especially, Jessica. After the service, Martha Rodriguez approached Jessica. Martha had been the neighbor who'd found Dorothy during the medical crisis, who'd called 911, who'd been more present in Dorothy's life than Jessica had been. Jessica, I'm not here to judge you. You've been judged enough. But I want you to know something. Your mother loved you until the end. Even when she couldn't remember your name, she'd talk about her daughter. She never stopped loving you. I wish you'd given her the same. Jessica could barely speak. I loved her. I just didn't show it. I failed her. Yes, you did. And you'll live with that. But maybe your failure can help others not fail their parents. Maybe that's Dorothy's final gift, forcing us all to confront what we're doing to the people we claim to love. Jessica nodded. It was the only redemption available, turning her catastrophic failure into a lesson for others. September 2024. 1 month after Dorothy's death, the will reading was scheduled. Jessica assumed there was little to read. Dorothy's estate was modest. The house had been sold to pay for memory care. Savings were depleted. Maybe a few $1,000s remaining. Attorney Helen Martinez gathered the beneficiaries in her office. Jessica, Martha Rodriguez, the neighbor, and representatives from 2 organizations, the Austin Teachers Union, Dorothy's former employer, and Alzheimer's Research Foundation. Helen began reading. I, Dorothy Williams, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this my last will and testament, executed June 2022. June 2022. Before Dorothy's final decline, when she still had legal capacity to make decisions. To my daughter Jessica Williams, I leave my collection of family photographs, Harold's wedding ring, and my mother's antique necklace. These items have sentimental value and represent our family history. I hope they remind you of better times and of the people who loved you. Jessica felt the pointed absence. No money, just sentimental items. Things that would force her to remember. Additionally, to Jessica Williams, I leave the 4 Amazon Alexa devices that were installed in my home in March 2021. These devices documented 3 years of my life. 3 years of loneliness, of unanswered calls, of desperation. I leave them to Jessica so she can remember what she chose to ignore, so she can live with the physical evidence of my suffering. May these devices serve as reminder. Technology cannot replace presence, monitoring cannot replace love, and convenience cannot excuse neglect. Helen paused. Let that settle. Jessica was crying silently. Helen continued. To Martha Rodriguez, my neighbor and friend, I leave $15,000 in gratitude for your consistent kindness. You checked on me when my daughter did not. You called 911 when I needed help. You were present. That presence matters more than blood relation. Thank you. Martha was shocked. She hadn't expected anything. She'd just been a good neighbor. To the Austin Teachers Union, I leave $20,000 to establish the Dorothy Williams Fellowship for Teacher Mental Health. Teaching was my life's work. Teachers give everything to their students. They deserve support for their own well-being. May this fellowship help teachers avoid the isolation I experienced in retirement. To the Alzheimer's Association, I leave $25,000 for research and support programs. Dementia is devastating not just for patients but for families. Or it should be devastating for families. Mine barely noticed. May this donation help families who actually care about their loved ones facing this disease. Helen paused again. The remainder of the estate, after debts and expenses, totaling approximately $40,000, I leave in equal shares to organizations combating elder isolation, senior center programs, volunteer visitor services, and technology education programs that teach families the difference between monitoring and caring. Finally, I include this statement to be read publicly. My daughter Jessica installed surveillance in my home and called it care. She monitored my existence but ignored my experience. She knew I was alive but not whether I was living. I do not leave her money because she made clear through her actions that I was not a priority. She prioritized her career, her convenience, her comfort. I prioritize in death what she ignored in life: human connection, presence, the difference between watching and being with. Jessica, I loved you. But love requires more than technological monitoring. I hope you learn that. I hope other children learn that. I hope my documented loneliness, 1,247 unanswered calls, 234 crying episodes, 3 years of desperation, serves as warning. This is what remote care actually looks like. This is what happens when you choose convenience over presence. Don't let this be your legacy. The room was silent except for Jessica's quiet sobbing. She'd expected to be disinherited, expected punishment. But hearing her mother's words, the pain, the understanding, the hope that Jessica would learn, was more devastating than anger would have been. Dorothy hadn't died hating Jessica. She died disappointed, hoping Jessica would change, hoping the public exposure would teach lesson. That was somehow worse. Helen closed the document. That concludes the reading. Jessica, you'll receive the photographs, jewelry, and the 4 Alexa devices. Martha, your check will be ready this week. The organizations will receive their funds within 30 days. After the others left, Jessica sat alone with Helen. She didn't hate me, Jessica said quietly. No, she loved you. That's what makes this so painful. If she'd hated you, it would be easier. But she loved you and you weren't there. You broke her heart through absence, not malice. What do I do now? You live with it. You honor her memory by changing, by helping other families avoid this, by being honest about what you did wrong so others don't repeat your mistakes. I destroyed my mother's last years. I can't undo that. No, you can't. But you can make sure her suffering meant something. Her story is public now. People are listening. Use that. Speak honestly about your failure. Help people understand that monitoring isn't care. That's the only redemption available to you. Jessica took the 4 Alexa devices home, unpacked them, plugged them in one by one, listened to them power up with their friendly chimes. These devices had been her mother's primary companions for 3 years, had documented every moment of suffering Jessica had ignored, were now hers to keep, to remember, to live with. She couldn't bring herself to use them, couldn't ask them for music or weather or any of the trivial things they were designed to provide. They represented her failure, were monuments to her absence. She kept them on a shelf in her apartment, visible, unavoidable, daily reminders of what she'd done, what she'd failed to do, who she'd failed to be. The 4 Alexa devices, Dorothy's final gift, evidence of 3 years of ignored suffering. Technology that had enabled neglect, now serving as eternal witnesses to Jessica's catastrophic failure as a daughter. October 2024 through March 2025. 6 months after Dorothy's death. The Alexa witness case, as it became known, had fundamentally changed how society discussed elder care, technology, and family responsibility. Congressional hearings concluded with new regulations. The Elder Technology Responsibility Act required tech companies marketing devices for senior care to include prominent warnings: this device cannot replace human presence. Monitoring is not care. Regular in-person contact remains essential. Companies had to provide resources for families on maintaining genuine connection alongside technological tools. Amazon, Google, Apple, all major smart home companies revised their policies. They implemented AI content review for patterns indicating user distress. If someone repeatedly expressed loneliness, depression, or suicidal ideation to their device, the system would flag it for human review and contact emergency services or designated family members. The changes came too late for Dorothy, but they would help others. Companies had been forced to acknowledge their devices weren't neutral tools. They were documenting human suffering and had some responsibility to respond. Academic institutions incorporated the case into curriculum. Medical schools, nursing programs, social work degrees, all included the Alexa witness as case study in elder care ethics. What does adequate care look like? When does remote monitoring cross into neglect? What are children's actual responsibilities to aging parents? Jessica Williams became an unlikely advocate. Not by choice, she had no career left, no reputation to protect. But because her story was public, people wanted to hear from her, wanted to understand how someone could fail so completely and what others could learn from that failure. She gave talks at hospitals, senior centers, caregiver conferences. Always the same message: I thought technology was care. I was wrong. I monitored my mother's existence but ignored her experience. I knew she was alive but not whether she was suffering. I convinced myself that remote care was adequate because it was convenient for me. My mother spent 3 years calling out for connection and I didn't answer. Don't be me. Don't let technology enable your avoidance. Your parents need presence, not monitoring. Visit them. Call them. Be with them. Before it's too late to repair what you've broken. The talks were difficult. People asked hard questions. Didn't you love your mother? How could you ignore 1,247 calls? What kind of person does that? Jessica answered honestly, I did love her, but I loved my convenience more. I loved my career, my comfort, my excuses, and I convinced myself that as long as she was safe, medically stable, housed, monitored, I was fulfilling my duty. I was wrong. Safety isn't living. Survival isn't care. I learned that too late. Some audiences were sympathetic, recognized themselves in Jessica's story, realized they were making similar choices with their own aging parents. Jessica's talks prompted thousands of adult children to examine their relationships with elderly parents, to increase visit frequency, to prioritize presence over monitoring. Other audiences were hostile, saw Jessica as monster beyond redemption. Threw the statistics at her like weapons: 1,247 unanswered calls, 234 crying episodes, 5.8% response rate. Demanded to know how she lived with herself. I don't live with myself well, Jessica would respond. I live with crushing guilt, with knowledge that I destroyed my mother's final years, with certainty that I'm the villain in her story. But guilt isn't enough. I have to use my failure to help others avoid the same mistakes. That's the only way my mother's suffering can mean anything. Martha Rodriguez, Dorothy's neighbor, became an advocate too. She spoke about being a bystander, seeing Dorothy's isolation but not intervening more forcefully. I called Jessica twice to express concern. Jessica dismissed me. I should have pushed harder, should have contacted adult protective services, should have made more noise. Bystanders have responsibility too. If you see someone isolated, speak up, loud enough that you can't be ignored. The 4 Alexa devices remained on Jessica's shelf. She never used them, never asked them questions or commands. They sat silent, dark, monuments to her failure. But she kept them powered on, because occasionally, maybe once a month, one would randomly activate. Some electronic glitch, some background noise triggering a response. The device would chime, wake up, the blue ring would glow. And in those moments, Jessica would freeze, would remember her mother saying, Alexa, call Jessica, 1,247 times. Would remember that most of those calls went unanswered. Would remember that her mother died still waiting for Jessica to show up. The devices were haunted, not by ghosts, but by recordings, by 3 years of documented suffering stored in Amazon's cloud, by evidence that would exist forever, every timestamp, every unanswered call, every crying episode preserved digitally. Jessica had become the most documented failure in modern family history. Future generations would study her case, would listen to those recordings, would use her as example of what not to do. She'd wanted to be remembered for her career achievement, her professional success. Instead, she'd be remembered as the daughter who let technology replace presence, who monitored her mother but ignored her suffering, who learned too late that artificial intelligence cannot provide human love. March 2025. 18 months after the story broke, Jessica received a letter from someone named Robert Chen in Portland, Oregon. Ms. Williams, I'm writing to tell you that your mother's story saved my relationship with my father. I was doing exactly what you did, installed smart home monitoring, called occasionally, assumed technology was adequate care. Then I heard the Alexa recordings, heard your mother begging for connection, recognized myself in you. I was horrified. I immediately increased visits with my dad, started seeing him weekly instead of monthly, started really talking to him, not just checking boxes. Your failure taught me before I failed my own parent. I'm grateful for your honesty, even though I know it cost you everything. Your mother's suffering wasn't meaningless. It changed how I parent. Thank you. Jessica cried, reading the letter. It was the first time since Dorothy's death that she felt something other than pure guilt. Not relief. She didn't deserve relief. Not redemption. That wasn't possible. But purpose. Her catastrophic failure was preventing other failures. Her mother's documented suffering was teaching lessons that might save other families. She kept the letter, started collecting others like it, people who'd changed their behavior after hearing Dorothy's story, parents who visited more, children who called more, families who realized monitoring wasn't enough. By mid-2025, she had hundreds of letters. Each one represented a family that hadn't repeated her mistakes, didn't erase her guilt, but gave her something to hold onto. Evidence that Dorothy's final years, terrible as they were, had created change. The 4 Alexa devices remained on the shelf. Silent witnesses, permanent reminders. Technology that had documented a tragedy and, in doing so, had prevented countless others. Dorothy Williams had spent 3 years calling out to artificial intelligence because her daughter wouldn't listen. Now millions had listened, had heard Dorothy's voice, lonely, desperate, abandoned, had heard the sound of modern neglect, had vowed not to let technology enable their own avoidance. Some lessons can only be learned through witnessing another's complete failure. Some changes require seeing the worst outcome documented in undeniable detail. Some truths need a witness, even an artificial one, to be heard. Dorothy's story would be told for generations, not as inspiration, nothing about it was inspiring, but as warning, as evidence, as proof that monitoring is not care, that technology cannot replace humanity, that love requires presence. The Alexa devices had borne witness. Now history would bear witness to what happens when families choose convenience over connection, when children choose careers over parents, when society prioritizes efficiency over empathy. Dorothy Williams died isolated and alone, but her voice, preserved in Amazon's cloud, broadcast to millions, ensured she would never be forgotten. And her daughter Jessica would never forget, would live every remaining day with the knowledge that she'd had 1,247 chances to answer her mother's calls for help. She'd answered 73 times, and that 5.8% response rate would define her forever.